This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast. We are live at 2:45-ish. Together, we will unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Trip Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose all season long. As we provide a little bit of fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We are coming to you from the Unpacking It Ministry studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. Trip is back in studio. Aaron, my producer, is here. We've been recording this over the last couple of months, but we are live today so that you can leave comments, you can ask questions, you can interact and engage with us here on the show. And for those of you that listen later, you can also leave comments. You can email me, Bryce at fantasyfootballfellowship.com. Always love hearing from you. Hopefully you have already signed up to become a free member of Fantasy Football Fellowship. If you have not, be sure to do so. It's not too late. fantasyfootballfellowship.com. Gain access to all of our free content all season long, including our weekly breakouts where we take a fantasy concept, relate it to life, relate it to faith. And the week one, the debut, actually launches at 5:00 today. So be excited for that. All members can access that. And then today on the show, we will talk about that breakout. And so today's breakout is all about knowing your league's rules and settings and understanding the format. So we've got a fun parallel in that regard today. Also on the show, Trip and I will share our fantasy MVPs, our predictions for who will be the top scorer at each position, total points for the year. And then also we will give you our all Bryce team and all Trip team, just based on the teams that we've drafted so far, and sort of, hey, here's my top quarterback, running back on my teams that I'm rolling with. So we'll have some fun with that as well. All right, I think we're all set. Trip, you ready? Here we go. We are live today. How you doing?
It's the most wonderful time. It's the best time of the year, man. We got some real football, albeit some JV football this past weekend, which is what I call college football. I don't want to maybe offend some of our viewers who I'm sure are big college football fans. I went to UNC, so I don't care about college football. Less than 48 hours by the time this this goes on a podcast feed till NFL football begins. I got my Ravens jersey on today, my Lamar Jackson jersey on, getting ready for that first game on Thursday night. I love it, man.
Is that jersey a tease for our quarterback MVP this season? It might be.
Got to be on the short list. That's right. Yeah, and it's going to be a fun game on Thursday with those two teams squaring off to start the season.
It's amazing. And we've got Detroit and the Rams coming up. I mean, so we got some really good matchups week one. And so it's already time. We got to think about our lineups, getting it set. We'll talk a little bit about the waiver wire, getting ahead of the game. These next couple of days. And so I guess just kind of first off, any notes or headlines from the last week that has jumped out to you? I will say the one waiver wire move that I've already made is not as soon, but I thought about it. As soon as the Broncos released Samaje Perine and the Chiefs picked him up, I picked him up. Mm-hmm. And so I added him to a 14-team league as a backup running back because I believe he will be involved. I believe he will be that third down running back for the Chiefs, a big part of the game. I think Pacheco will be in there on third downs at times as well, but I believe in Perine. I think he's the right fit for Andy Reid. He's a veteran. He blocks well, and so he'll be out on the field. He just didn't fit in Denver with Sean Payton. It just wasn't the answer there. So anyway, that's my big takeaway from the last week. Anything jump out for you?
I mean, Ricky Pearsall got shot this weekend.
That was sad. Gosh.
Yeah, and I'm glad he's okay. It seems like he's okay, and he's going to make a full recovery. Pretty miraculous, actually. Just the bullet passed through his body without hitting anything vital, is what I heard. It's hard to pivot immediately from that bit of news to the fantasy football implications. So first of all, we hope that he's okay. Sounds like he will be. But I think I don't think Ricky Pearsall is going to be playing for a while. I still continue to believe that Ayuk is going to be in the doghouse a little bit because of his offseason actions. And I think that means that Deebo Samuel and George Kittle are being underdrafted. I just think those guys stand to benefit from, particularly if Ayuk is not in sort of mid-season form for these first few weeks. Debo could be one of these guys that we're talking about as like a sort of dark horse MVP kind of guy at wide receiver.
Great value. I agree. I don't have him on any teams, but I would agree with that. Absolutely. And so the other thing to discuss here before we jump into the breakout, I think the first week, like leading up to our first week of games, plus following the first weekend of games, the approach that we take to the waiver wire and trades, I think is important for us to consider. So as a listener, what is your normal strategy? And do you even think about it, or are you just reacting? And so I think if we go in with a little bit more of a strategic bent, I think we will be better suited. And it's interesting. I've been listening to different fantasy talk as well, because I'm learning, I'm growing myself. And I try to share what I hear a little bit on the show. But when it comes to what to do with waiver wire, especially if you're in a fab where you're spending pretend dollars on the waiver wire, after week one, it's so easy to be tempted to spend all of your money week one because you see that one huge week one breakout game, unbelievable performance. And what we have to remember is, yes, there are the Kyron Williams. Yes, there are the Puka Nacua situations in the world. But the name that pops into my mind also is Dante Pettis. One year he had this huge week one, I think it was, or I don't know. I just remember blowing a bunch of waiver wire dollars one year on Dante Pettis. So we have to understand, okay, certain guys that maybe have been hyped in the offseason, that maybe we were wondering, it's like, let's wait and see how do they do week one. Well, if they hit on week one and they're still on the waiver wire, then yes, we go get them. But if it's somebody like totally out of the blue, or it's somebody that we've known that's just kind of been a veteran that's around and he just happens to have a big game for one reason or another, brace yourself. It's fun to get a guy week one, but wait. I think it's nerve-wracking to just go all in on, I don't know, the random Jahan Dotson or something. I don't know. Just pace yourself after week one. What's your approach to the waiver wire?
Yeah, I think you want to be the person who pays attention to your league mates' overreactions and then acts based on those, right? So every once in a while, you'll see somebody drop after a bad week one or a bad couple of weeks to start the season, a player that should not be dropped. And if you've blown your waiver priority or spent a large amount of your fab already, you're not in a position to go after that guy. It can come back to haunt you when you miss a great player. And the one sort of caveat there is if you lose one of your vital running backs, especially, you got to go hard after that handcuff, So that's the one caveat there. But I do think I love to make trade offers in like week 2, week 3. Somebody who before the season started, I thought was going to be a great player and then had a dud coming out of the gate, and try to, I want to say you take advantage of your league mates. I'm not going to say that. All right. But you stick to what you believe before the season and don't let 1 week of action change your opinion on a player that's a stud or that you had high opinion of before the season started.
Absolutely. Keep with your convictions. So if you really believe in a guy and he gets off to a slow start, that's okay. And the other thing we have to remember, and this is one of my big pet peeves, because teams don't play in the preseason, many of the offenses won't be ready week one. Like they're not going to be rocking and rolling. We're not going to see these guys at their best in week one. Now, even if they did play in preseason, that's not the case. It takes 3 to 4 weeks for the offenses to catch up to the defenses. Defenses seem to come in. They're probably better early in the year because they're not banged up physically. So they're ready to hit you. They're ready to play tough. Defenses shine the first part of the season. And so we also have to factor that in. So if you believe in a certain guy and you're like, oh man, the shiny new guy on the waiver wire, you just have to, who do you feel strongly about? If you, all offseason you were counting on this guy and then you give up on him week one because the offense gets off to a slow start, no, forget about it. And later we will share, and I'll just say it now, the team that I'm most excited to watch is the Atlanta Falcons, because it's weird as a Panthers fan, but I want to see what this team looks like with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback. But I also have to be patient because Kirk Cousins is first game back after an Achilles injury. Let's make sure he gets healthy, but this will be one of the more fun offenses, I think, to watch, because I'm all in from a fantasy standpoint this season on those weapons. But again, we got a perspective. Let's stick to sort of our principles, our convictions as the season gets going. Don't trade away players that are going to be good later in the season. Don't get emotional early in the year. Just let it play out a little bit. So that's my little bit of an encouragement as we get things going. Any final thoughts on trades or waiver wires?
Nope, I
Waiver
agree with
wire.
everything you said. Yeah, I mean,
All
I
right.
think, if your favorite team plays a brutal defense week 1, don't lose heart. You know, if
That's
they
it.
square off against the Ravens, I guess it'll be the Chiefs. So put that one aside. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Good advice.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So let's jump into this week's breakout, and we're going to talk league settings and rules. And one of the biggest things that is important, but also one of the fun parts about fantasy football is how every league is set up differently. Every commissioner decides how he wants to structure the league, how he wants to design the league. So when a league is created, they determine, all right, we're going to go with 12 teams, 14 teams, 10 teams. We're going to have PPR, 4 point per reception, whatever the starting lineup is going to be, 2 flexes, 1 flex, super flex. All of these are factored into how a league is put together. And so before we jump in, Trip, what is your favorite league format that you normally play? And then is there a most creative league or format that you prefer?
So I think I, like you, commission pretty much every league that I'm a member of. And so you got to know whether you are playing with a group of casual players versus intense fantasy players. Even in my most casual leagues, I've loved in the last few years to add an additional flex player. I just think it's fun to have more players and more scoring. So more and more, I find myself 2 RB, 3 wide receiver, and then maybe 2 flexes on top of that. I think a big, long starting lineup is pretty fun. If it's a more intense group, man, you start throwing in things like tight end premium and super flex. I'm coming around on super flex being a pretty fun format, which means that you can start 2 quarterbacks. You can put a quarterback in that flex spot. But no, most of all, I just love to play in a bunch of different types of leagues. I think it's fun to have kind of a mix. If you're playing in 3 or 4 leagues with your buddies, mix it up a little bit. That's a fun thing to do.
Yes. No, it gives you just different experiences. And so, even here at Unpacking It, we've got multiple league formats. So we actually have a 32 team league. We've got an auction best ball league. And then we have a 4 division, 1 champion league as well. So 4 individual leagues that all operate as an individual league. But then at the end, in the final week, whoever scores the highest in the championship game is the overall winner. So we switch it up in that regard. One of the leagues, you actually get a half a point for first downs, which I think is a unique scoring bonus type thing. And then other leagues have bonuses for 100 yards rushing and 200 yards receiving or 400 yards passing. And so some of those incentives are kind of fun in different leagues. I think a big decision that leagues make are how many bench spots, and that determines a lot. I like more bench because I want to load up on some of those backup running backs and wait for them to hit instead of playing the waiver wire game. But usually a lot of times I'll if I open it up to the rest of the league to vote on, they like shorter benches. They want the ability to get into the waiver wire. So again, different formats. And I'm curious, if you're watching live, you can leave your comments and say, hey, this is my favorite type of league and settings. But part of this, as you start, first off, before the draft. And so for those of you that are drafting in the next couple of days, you got to make sure you do this. But even throughout the year, reminding yourself of the league settings and rules within the league so that you are familiar with them. So if it is a PPR league, the guys that you're going to target on waivers are going to be guys that will benefit in PPR. So I talked about Samaje Perine earlier. He's a PPR guy. I believe he's going to catch a lot of passes from Patrick Mahomes and be a nice contributor this year. So you've got to know the settings, the rules. You look at it. But here's the thing. A lot of guys will enter a draft blindly. They don't know what the rules are. They don't know what the settings are. So if they don't know that wide receivers are more valuable, then they might draft, 2-3 running backs early and be at a major disadvantage. Or leagues, if it is a super flex and waiting forever to get a quarterback, and you're in big trouble. I accidentally got into a league a couple of years ago. Not accidentally, but I didn't look at the rules, and I waited on a quarterback, and I had no shot. I actually responded, considering that I actually competed pretty well, but it took me a long time to recover. I had like Ben Roethlisberger, and I was on his final year. I was struggling, and quarterbacks got a point per completion. It totally threw me off. So I was a mess. I wasn't prepared for the draft. And so I totally whiffed on it. And so I bring up this whole topic today to really be a parallel and an encouragement to us to realize the benefits of knowing the rules and the structure and the ramifications of disregarding the rules and putting together a roster that is not aligned actually relates to our own lives. And here's where it goes back to sort of the foundational understanding is the commissioner designs and creates the league. Do we believe that God created the world? And do we believe that he is the designer and that he set up how this world operates? And do we actually know and understand what he's revealed to us as far as his design, his plans, his purposes, his will? And the good news is that he has revealed a lot of it to us in his word. Now, he is all-knowing and we are not. And so he's revealed just a glimpse of what this life is all about and how he set things up. But he has allowed us in on this. But here's the thing. Do we know? Do we study? Do we understand? Or are we walking around like the fantasy manager showing up to drafts and going into the waiver wire, not understanding the rules, not understanding the settings and the format? And so we don't want to operate foolishly in this life. We want to thrive and experience fruit and experience God's best. And so do we believe that he is the creator, that his way is best, and that the rules and the commandments that he's given us are for our benefit? They're for our good. They're to protect us. They're to help us. Do we believe that? Or do we disregard them? And we go, draft and live however we want, right? And we just go, who cares what the settings are? I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm going to draft 6 tight ends. Well, we got a lot of people walking around drafting 6 tight ends. And hey, it doesn't work. And you're wondering, why is my life the way this is? Well, you look at your lineup. It's not good. And so are we making wise decisions? Do they line up with God? And are we aligning our lives with him? So Tripp, I got us going. Let me have you jump in here.
Yeah, the Bible says from beginning to end that God is the God of truth, that he is truth and he loves to tell the truth. And his truth is in many ways the framework that he gives us for understanding life and understanding the world that we live in, and so we live in a highly confused time and place sort of in history. We live in a confused culture that has all these questions about where do we find truth? What is the source of truth? And our Father loves us enough. Now that I'm a parent, I'm understanding this in a new way. If you love your little toddlers run through the world sort of testing different truth theories, and they get a lot of bruises on their head and a lot of skint knees and a lot of injuries because they're trying to figure out, how does this world work? And as a dad, if I love my kids, I'm not just going to say, well, buddy, go figure it out, and I don't really have any advice for you. Our Father loves to tell us the truth about how we're made, what we're made for in the world that we live in. And the main way that he does that is through his word. He does it through other people as well, but he does it through his word. He loves to tell us the truth because he loves us.
Amen. I love it. And I'm right there with you. As a dad of young girls, I see it. No, hey, listen, I love you. That's why this is the rule. We're not going to eat another sucker. But no, we're done. We're done with suckers for the day. I had that fight yesterday. The ice cream was enough. The ice cream and the earlier cookie is enough for the day. But here's the deal. So I believe that God created the world. Genesis 1:1. The Bible starts off, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so that is our foundation. Now, what do we also know? We know that sin entered the world through Adam and Eve. And so in some ways it's like, oh man, God designed this perfect world. Now they messed it up. But God also had a plan and design for us to be reconciled to him. And so thankfully, Jesus came to earth, was born, lived a perfect life, died on the cross, rose again. And now we are invited to, quote unquote, join his league, right? To become a follower of his. But here's the deal. As we follow Jesus and as we are welcomed into his league, there are rules, right? There are settings. There's a framework to use Tripp's language. I like that. That this is the way to live. And so we are called to live like Jesus, to follow Jesus, his way. So he came to earth to show us how to live. And again, in God's word, it's laid out. Hey, here's the best way to live. Here's how I've designed it. Here's what I've commanded you to do. And so do we know what the word says, what these commandments are, what how Jesus actually lived and what his character was like. Maybe we're learning, maybe we're growing, but are we actively pursuing and understanding and learning? And so here's some scripture to encourage us all today. Jesus says in John 5:24, I assure you and most solemnly say to you, the person who hears my word, the one who heeds my message and believes and trusts in him who sent me possesses now eternal life. That is, eternal life actually begins. The believer is transformed and does not come into judgment and condemnation, but has passed over from death to life. And so here we are. We're in his league. We're now desiring to live like him. And 1 John 2:6 states, those who say they live in God should live their lives as Jesus did. And then Ephesians 2:10 tells us, for we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. And so we have to understand, the best way to live and win, right? Win in regards to living a fruitful life according to his way, his word, his settings, and the way that he set things up. So are we living that way, or are we just disregarding it? And I think the other part of this is there's so many unnecessary struggles that we can avoid when we know wisdom, when we learn wisdom and we ask God for wisdom found in his word and understanding, oh, wait, if I do this, that ends in destruction. That's a bad path to go. But the more we stay on the right path and we learn and we grow according to his ways, well, now all of a sudden we avoid so much of the unnecessary pain in life. There is pain and suffering in life, and that's just part of the brokenness of this world. But so much of the pain and suffering that we experience is because of sin and disobedience, because we don't know God's word, or we disregard it, or we say, nah, not for me. Well, it's just like the fantasy guy who wonders why he's losing every week. Dude, you don't know the settings. You don't understand the league. The commissioner set this up and has made it available to you. Just go in and click settings and rules. It's going to help you out. It's going to help you out. Trip, you're laughing here. I got you laughing today.
I'm laughing because before we came on the air, we were talking about a league that I'm in. We drafted together last night. There are two guys in this league that are kind of the historical bottom dwellers, but one of them is receptive to guidance and to feedback and to wisdom. And he's gradually creeping up the rankings year over year. The other one just says, I don't want to hear anything about your advice, and I'm just here to have a good time, and I'm goofing off. And that's what he wants to do in fantasy. That's okay. But when you do that in life, that is foolish to say, I don't want to hear criticism. I don't want to hear feedback. I don't want to hear wisdom or truth. The amazing thing about Jesus, the thing that sets Jesus apart from anyone else who has ever lived, and the thing that sets Christianity apart from any other religion, is that Jesus didn't come along and say, you better get good at following my rules, and then I'll let you be my friend. Then I'll let you be my follower. You follow the rules, and then I'll love you. Jesus doesn't say that. He says, I love you. I've already done everything necessary to make you my friend and my follower. And now as you follow me, I want to teach you the truth. I want to teach you wisdom. I want to teach you the format that I ingrained into the world when I made it. I mean, I love the Ephesians 2:10 verse that you just read there, Bryce. And if you go read the 9 verses before that in Ephesians, they're all about what Jesus has done to reconcile us to himself. And then he says, now come follow me. I've created you for good works. I'm recreating you to do good and beautiful things in the world, to flourish in the world. And you're exactly right. That doesn't always mean that we won't experience suffering, that we won't struggle, but over time, he's transforming us to follow him with more integrity and more power in the world when we live according to his truth.
No, it's such an important truth to understand. And yes, it's not, and our message today isn't, you got to do all these rules. And that's not what we're invited into. We're comparing this to joining the league, right? We're joining Jesus. We're joining his family. We're joining his league. It's free to join. Like, we're in.
Right,
it's because of what he's done. It's all grace and love and mercy. And so, and by our, placing our faith in him and what he's done, that's how we're in the league. But once we're in, well, let's kind of understand, okay, well, how does this work? And what does this look like? Well, for the most part, it comes down to, are our eyes fixed on Jesus? And are we following him and desiring to become more and more like him and to live like Jesus lived? Because he came and showed us and lived perfectly. So let's follow him. Let's follow him and understand again that God is the creator. So if he designed this, he's all knowing. He's got to figure it out. Well, let's get to know him and let's understand what he has revealed, his plans, his purposes, his will. Let's try to grasp it as much as we can. Not that we're going to know all that he knows. It's in humility, but we continue to pursue him and continue to grow. And so I'll leave us with this. Ephesians 5:17 says, therefore, do not be foolish and thoughtless, but understand and firmly grasp what the will of the Lord is. And so, again, the revealed will that's found in God's word, the Bible, let's continue to unpack it, study it, learn it, and continue to seek after him. So there you go. That's this week's Breakout. Know your league's rules and settings. And so you can read this as well. And there's some more verses and some more insight on our website, fantasyfootballfellowship.com, and then encourage you to discuss it with your league. We've got at least 10 questions to discuss as well. Some fantasy questions in there too. So I hope that is encouraging and just a good reminder. Just always go back to, wait, all right, I didn't create myself. God created me. I'm going to follow him. I think he knows more than I know. I got to continue to remind myself of that, because sometimes we start thinking like we got all the answers, and how foolish that can be. All right, let's have a little fantasy fun here as we get ready for the season to begin Thursday night. So we're going to make some predictions here today. I want you to jump in. If you're listening, you can leave comments, whatever social media platform you're on right now. Let us know your thoughts. And we'll begin with just a general, all right, who's going to be the MVP at each position this year? Who do you think will be the number one overall quarterback at the end of the season? Now, part of this factors in, who will play the most games and put up the most points. That usually, that's the MVPs, because there will be some guys that, man, they played great, but they only play 7 weeks. Well, they can't really be the MVP if they leave you hanging after that. So I'll start. And Tripp is actually he walked in today wearing his jersey. So I think the quarterback MVP this year will be Lamar Jackson. I think the step that Zay Flowers will take in his second year as a wide receiver will be significant. And I believe the addition of Derrick Henry is going to take a huge load off of Lamar Jackson. I still think Lamar will run, but he won't have to run quite as much and get banged up as much. The touchdowns they're just going to score more touchdowns. They're going to have more opportunities. When it's 3rd and short, you hand it off to Derrick Henry, you're getting those first downs, more opportunities to score, more opportunities for yardage. And I just believe Lamar, when I kind of factor in some of the other quarterbacks and their situations, I think Lamar is going to be the guy this year. So sadly, he's not on any of my fantasy teams. So that's just a sort of an unbiased take on that front. But who's your quarterback MVP this year?
I love Lamar, and imagine having to defend that Ravens offense with the weapons that they have and the different ways they can hurt you. They're going to be scary on offense.
I'm curious to see who their second receiver will be this year. Rashad Bateman, someone else going to emerge. I don't know, but with Flowers and Andrews and Henry, it's as strong as it gets.
I think it's going to be Isaiah Likely.
It could be. I like Likely.
It feels likely. I'm going to go QB MVP. I'm going to go with Kyler Murray. I'm sorry, man. I think that the Cardinals offense is going to be really, really good. And when Kyler came back last year, even when he wasn't at full health, he was still a top 10 fantasy guy. It's hard to know what the whole Cardinals team is going to look like, but I think that their offense is going to be exciting and dynamic. And I think Kyler's going to run a lot and throw for some pretty high yardage. And so I'm going Kyler Murray here, man.
I can't get away. I had lunch. This would make me sound cooler than I am, but I had lunch with a former Cardinals football player, and his take on Kyler Murray was not very good. So I haven't been able to let go of that. And listen, I've been watching other fantasy shows. People are hyped. They're psyched about Kyler Murray, and maybe from a fantasy perspective, his ability to run and throw, and they've got some weapons. Maybe you're right, but I just can't trust them. I can't fully trust them.
I get the immaturity concerns, and as a real life quarterback, I get the sort of like attitude issues that you might have. But just in terms of when the guy gets on the field and he plays football, he is so dynamic. He's so exciting. He runs more than we think, and he's a good passer. And now I think he is surrounded with weapons that I think are pretty good. Besides Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, I think that Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson are also good receivers. So I just think that the Cardinals offense is going to be prolific this year.
The only Cardinals player I had was Michael Wilson, and I just dropped him to pick up Samaje Perine. So now I'm out on the Cardinals officially. So we will go head to head on the Cardinals all season long. So that's all right. All right. So the MVP at the running back position, I think I've made this clear since our first episode of the new season back in July. I have been all in on Bijan Robinson. I have heard the hype for Tyler Algier, and it hasn't stopped me. I think Bijan will be the number one fantasy running back this season. And I know, even over CMC, I just think even the offensive line with San Francisco makes me a little nervous. And I just think for the course of the season, Bijan's going to be the guy in Atlanta. So what about you, running back?
I'm going Kenneth Walker here. I went back and looked at this, man, because I was like, is my memory playing tricks on me? Like, am I wrong about this? And week 10 last year, he got hurt in week 11. Okay. And he missed a couple of games there. But at week 10, Kenneth Walker was the running back 6, and Seattle had already had their bye. And I think it was half PPR scoring. So I just think that Kenneth Walker is really good. I think that offense is going to change in a drastic way this year. I think they're going to be faster paced. They're going to run more plays. And the narrative on Walker has always been that he's not a pass catching back, and that's going to be Zach Charbonnet's role. I think that is still possible. I think it's just more that he has never been on offenses that have featured the running back as a pass catcher. Pete Carroll never did that. I mean, there was just no, so I think Kenneth Walker, who's being drafted somewhere around RB like 15 right now, is going to be top 5 running back. I'll put it at top 5 running back. And so I'm going to say, yeah, if everything breaks right, he will be the running back MVP and a guy you want to have on your fantasy team.
I would be psyched about that. I'm all in on him as well. So I've got Bijan and Kenneth Walker on the same team.
That feels really good.
Yes, let's go. So I'm psyched. All right. So the MVP at the wide receiver position, so my strategy all draft season has been get a top running back in the first round. And so I do not have any of the top wide receivers. My best wide receiver that I have on a team is Garrett Wilson. So I'm going to give you, though, my fantasy MVP wide receiver. And this is against, because I never draft him. I'm just not a fan of his, but it's Tyreek Hill. I still think of all the wide receivers of the top receivers. If you were going to pick a guy to score the most points this season, it's probably going to be him, because I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'd put him in the conversation here. But I'm worried about CeeDee Lamb. I'm worried about Jamar Chase because of the offseason, and especially with Chase, what's going on in Cincinnati. So we've talked about that the last couple of weeks. So of those guys, I'm out on the Vikings with Justin Jefferson. I don't think he will be the top wide receiver this year either. So it'll be fun. Maybe there's a guy that appears. Maybe it is Garrett Wilson this year. But as of today, with the information that we have and the history, and we know what Tyreek Hill can do, he would be my prediction for the wide receiver MVP. What about for you?
I'm going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
I think that he is going to score 1,000,000 points. I think that the Lions offense is going to be super exciting. They don't play outside until week 14. I keep coming back to that. And I think with the development of Sam Laporta, hopefully with Jameson Williams kind of clearing things out with the longer routes, I just think he's going to catch a ton of passes. Amon-Ra, more and more, I find myself thinking that if all of those receivers were there for me at the second pick of the draft, I haven't had a second pick so far, but I think that I might pick Amon-Ra as my number 1 wide receiver overall, and I think he's going to be the MVP at the wide receiver position.
I got no problem with that, other than I'm going to give you the tight end MVP, Sam Laporta. So I'm going to lean as maybe Laporta gets a little more extra, but I think he's the real deal. I think he came in last year, burst onto the scene, and he's not going anywhere. So if he's healthy, I think he's the most talented. He's the young guy. And he's needed in that offense too. I hope Jameson Williams is a stud this year. I actually just traded him away. So now I'm kind of out on him, but you're right. Amon-Ra will be awesome. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's going to be great again, but Laporta in the red zone, snagging, plenty of catches from Jared Goff. I think he'll be the number 1 tight end this year. What about for you?
I'm torn between 2 guys, but I'm going to follow my heart and not my head here, and I'm going to say Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
I think this is the year when it comes together for Kyle Pitts, best quarterback that he's ever had by a wide margin, and I mean that whether Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix is the guy who is on the field. I just think he finally is going to be unlocked by good quarterback play, and I'm going to choose to believe the things that we heard about him coming into the NFL and after his rookie season. And I'm going to go with him over Dalton Kincaid, which was the other guy I was considering. And maybe we're going to talk about him a little further down here. But yeah, Kyle Pitts, that's my guy, tight end.
Okay, so that will set up our next segment. So there you go. There's our MVPs. I want to talk about the players that got away. So all of us, if you've been in multiple leagues this offseason, you've been drafting, and there were certain players that you wanted to draft. And for the most part, if you're in, snake drafts, there are certain guys you're just not going to have a chance to get. Either, you'd really have to reach for them, or you'd have to get really lucky that they fell to you. And so you're just going to leave certain drafts and you go, man, I didn't get my guy. I didn't get him. And so I've now finished up most of my drafts. I have one more tonight, but I'm only going to draft 3 players because it's a keeper league. But anyway, here are the ones that got away from me this year. I wanted Cooper Kupp. I did. I wanted Cooper Kupp this year, and I wasn't able to snag him. I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver with the Rams. I think he has a big bounce back year. I think he's still got 1 or 2 big years left in him. And I think Stafford, he's got maybe one more year. I don't know about 2 more for Stafford, but at least 1 more to that connection with him and Kupp. So I believe in that one. And then following up your Kyle Pitts, I'm in on Atlanta. I don't like that I'm in on Atlanta, but I am. I can't help it. I like these weapons. I like the talent, but I'm leaning more toward Bijan in the running game. But I still like Drake London. I still like Kyle Pitts, but I did not get either one of those guys. I did get Darnell Mooney. I snagged him, so I'm excited about him. But I missed on the ones that got away were Drake and Kyle Pitts. And then I mentioned earlier with the Ravens, I think Zay Flowers, like that was a huge letdown when he let the Ravens down in the AFC Championship game. It was a dumb play, got the penalty and all that. I think that motivation, I think we saw a glimpse of how good he can be last year. I think a little bit more consistency this season. I think Zay Flowers has a big year, but I wasn't able to draft him. And then same with Derrick Henry. I didn't draft Derrick Henry, but I think he's going to be awesome. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 running back, but he'll most likely be, starting RB1 for you all season. He's not going to be necessarily vintage Derrick where they rely so heavily on him, but he's going to score a ton of touchdowns. He's going to be great. And especially at this stage of his career, he's going to be really good. Any guys that have, I know you still have a few more drafts, but
yeah, well, ask me again next week. But I think I'm coming around in a big way on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Again, maybe the Seahawks for me are what the Falcons are for you, where not because there's a quarterback change, but because I just think their offense was so slow and one-dimensional last year, and I think it's going to be a little more dynamic. Jackson Smith and Jigba caught something like a quarter of his receptions behind the line of scrimmage last year. He was so short yardage. They did not utilize him the right way. And I think he's going to be kind of released a little bit this year. And so I like JSM. I still got a few drafts coming up. And what I find is I just don't take running backs early. And so I end up getting a lot of the wide receivers that I'm excited about. We're going to see who breaks my heart. I got 3 drafts in the next 36 hours. So ask me again after that. But so far, not many of my my deeply loved guys have gotten away from me yet. But I'm sure they're going to.
All right. So with that said, now the guys that we're really all in on this season, we're going to reveal the all Bryce team and the all Trip team. And these are the players that we targeted the most in drafts, and we were able to snag the most in drafts. And throughout the year, you can hold us accountable really to these guys. All right. So I will reveal my team. At quarterback, it's Trevor Lawrence. I'm going back to the well. He was my guy last year. He let us down, but I think it's a big bounce back here. Let's not forget, he was a former number 1 pick. Let's not forget what he did 2 years ago. He's very talented, and he's got the weapons, and I think he's going to have a really nice season. So Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. At running back, it's Bijan Robinson and Kenneth Walker. Those are the 2 guys I'm leaning on, and I believe they'll have huge seasons. At wide receiver on the All Bryce team, it's Nico Collins. He was there for me last year. I jumped in. I was on the bandwagon early, and he delivered. I think he delivers again. I'm not worried about Stephon Diggs. I think if anything, adding another weapon just allows Nico to run a little bit freely, not getting double teamed. So I think that'll be huge. Even with Tank Dell back, I think there's enough to go around, but I think Nico will lead the way in Houston. And then the other wide receiver, I went against one of my principles where I don't like the number 2 wide receiver on a team, but I think Devontae Smith has a monster season with Kellen Moore taking over at offensive coordinator. I think the way that they will use Smith this season will give him an opportunity for more receptions, more touchdowns, and I think he's going to thrive. And then you mentioned him earlier. I'm all in on the tight end, Dalton Kincaid. Although I think Sam Laporta will be the best this year, I think Kincaid, especially where you draft him and where I drafted him, I traded for him. I love Dalton Kincaid. He's going to be the number one receiver, tight end, just most catches, yardage, touchdown for the Bills. And so that's going to deliver for us as fantasy managers. The number one weapon in that passing attack for the Bills will be Dalton Kincaid. And then my flex spot, I gotta go with the hometown guy, Deontay Johnson with the Panthers. I think especially where you draft them, I found, all right, here I am, 5th round, 6th round. Deontay Johnson. Let me take him again. So I'm excited to have him. He'll be the number one guy for the Panthers. And although the offense isn't going to be, lighting it up by any means here in Carolina, it will be better. And I think last year, Adam Thielen proved that a wide receiver can produce in the Panthers offense. And that was as bad as it gets. It'll be much better. And Deontay is going to be the number one guy with the Panthers. So there you go. There's the all Bryce team this season. Now for the all Trip team. Go ahead, Trip.
That team sounds really good to me, man. I admire your all Bryce team there. I already talked about Kyler Murray. And so at quarterback, since you've already claimed Trevor Lawrence, I did draft him in my home league last night, and I feel great about that. But right there, 13, 14, 15 in ADP are Tua, Trevor, and Jared Goff. And if we think that the Lions are going to explode the way that I think that they are, and it seems like you think that they are, then I'm totally fine having Jared Goff as my starting quarterback. I have him in some of the just for fun best ball leagues that I did earlier this summer, and I still feel great about that. And I'll be targeting him in some of these drafts that I have in the next few days. Running back, I like to wait at running back. And so 3 running backs that I find myself with a lot are Ty Chandler, who I think will be the highest scoring running back in Minnesota this year. At the end of the year, I think we're going to say Aaron Jones, who Ty Chandler is the guy, and I think that he will be drafted as a top 24 running back next season. I believe in Ty Chandler. Rico Dowdle is going to be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. I've been saying it all summer. I said it before all this kind of negative news about Zeke started to come out. I think that Rico Dowdle, much like Ty Chandler, is going to be a running back that you can start on a week-to-week basis from the very beginning of the season. And then if you're in a PPR league, this is PPR specific, but I think Jaleel McLaughlin is a guy that I'd like to at least have on my bench in PPR. If Sean Payton does what he likes to do, where he sort of turns these smaller running backs into effective sort of secondary wide receivers, I think that he could be a fun player to own. But those guys are because I am waiting at running back, because at wide receiver, I want Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Deontay Johnson. When the 3rd round comes around in my drafts, I find myself looking at DJ and DK. DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, and I feel great about having either one of those guys as my second receiver. So I love both of those guys. And then a late pick at wide receiver that I find myself ending up with on a lot of my teams is Demario Douglas. I think Demario Douglas will catch the most passes of any Patriots receiver. The Patriots might just be terrible this year. You're smirking at a lot of my picks here, man, but just remember these picks, okay? I'm going to check back in. Demario Douglas, I think, is going to catch the most passes, and if the Patriots are even just moderately serviceable on offense, I think that'll be
a good way.
Yeah,
that's a good way to sum up Jacoby Brissett. Moderately serviceable.
I mean, yeah,
that's who they're rolling with.
Yeah.
If they ever put Drake May out there, maybe. But
the beginning of their schedule is brutal, so I don't want to have to depend on Demario as a starter for the first 4 weeks or so of the season. But I think that Drake May, I think their bye is week 6, and I think Drake May will start after that. And I feel pretty good about Demario Douglas as a PPR guy again. Now, you're laughing at me, you're smirking at me for all these picks, and I'm gonna make you laugh out loud. If I don't get one of those top 5 tight ends, I'm not drafting a tight end. And with my last pick in the draft, I'm taking Taysom Hill.
Yep, there it is.
You keep making fun of me about Taysom Hill, and this is if I'm punting on the position. I'm just going to put Taysom in there with the understanding that there are going to be weeks where I get 2 points out of him. And I hope I feel pretty good about the rest of my roster because I punted tight end. I think there will be weeks, multiple weeks, where Taysom Hill scores more than 20 points. He is going to be all over the Saints offense and running out of every position, out of it, sort of every formation. He'll play quarterback. He'll play tight end. He'll play fullback. He'll play goal line back, and again, the Saints might just be atrocious this year. They might be really, really bad. But if they're just serviceable, I feel okay about punting at tight end if I don't get one of those top guys and rolling with Taysom Hill. I know that I'm putting the credibility of your podcast here at stake,
this is
Bryce,
our podcast, so they'll remember.
Remember, these were my picks and not Bryce's picks.
That's the all-trip team. That's the all-laughable team.
I'm taking a screenshot right now, man. I'm going to check back in at like week 10 and see how I feel about these.
I'm with you on the Ty Chandler. Other than, why didn't they just go with Ty Chandler? Why did they go out and get Aaron Jones? That's where there's some concern there. I think with Rico Dowdle, can he stay healthy? And it's just a little murky there. I mean, you got Zeke and Dalvin Cook. I don't think you really count on those guys. So I'm good with you on Rico there. Yeah, I don't want any Patriots players.
Who was the Vikings starting running back last year at the beginning of the season?
Alexander Madison.
It was Madison, and then it was Akers, and then it was Chandler, right? I mean, I think maybe
finally played well for them. Yeah,
I think the Vikings just feel like they are so snake bitten that it's so many injuries that mess them up every season that they're just like, we got to have a contingency plan at all of these positions, and so maybe you're just trying to deepen that position, and you saw an opportunity to get Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones' hamstrings are made of glass, and I'm happy to have Ty Chandler as like my third running back on my roster, maybe my fourth running back, and you can get him much later than that.
Yes, so I will try to snag him tonight. Actually, I'd be interested in that for sure. All right, so there you go. There's the all-trip team. It's good. It's good. I like a couple of those guys. Not too bad. All right,
I appreciate you trying to dignify me here, man. But we'll see. Maybe I just proved that I'm a fool.
No, it's okay.
Around and look at this in a few weeks.
That's it. Hey, we'll have the evidence. The evidence will be coming up in weeks to come. So the NFL team that you're most excited to watch week 1 or just as the season gets going is what team?
Probably the Jaguars. Yeah, we've talked about this before. I think that Trevor Lawrence was hurt for most of the season last year. I think they were trying to figure out the Calvin Ridley experiment, and it never quite worked on a week-to-week basis. I think the Jaguars are going to be a good team this year. I think they'll make the playoffs, and I think they could kind of surprise some people with how far they go in the playoffs.
Yeah, that AFC South is a goofy division, but it's very intriguing.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch.
The Colts could be good if Richardson's healthy. The Texans, if they do it again, are they going to really do it again? They might. I hope they do. I like them a lot. And then the Titans are sort of sneaky. So people are starting to buy the Will Levis quarterback hype. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm not in on that yet. But we'll see. All right. Last thing as we wrap things up. Appreciate everybody watching live. Thanks for leaving comments and liking and sharing. And we'll be live every week, 2:45 on Tuesdays. So it's all throughout the season. So it's going to be a fun season. Glad to have Trip on board. Even though he thinks Jaleel McLaughlin's going to going to be the guy this year. No, he's going to be good. I
think Javonte will also be good. All right. I don't want to offend your Javonte take.
No. They'll both be good. I never got either one of them. I did end up with Cortland Sutton, so I did snag him. But here, let's wrap up with some waiver wire names to either take a look at heading into the first week or definitely to be aware of following the weekend. So in Green Bay, I don't trust Josh Jacobs. He's had like one good year in the last few years, but he's been very overrated. He's the starter in Green Bay. Go get Marshawn Lloyd. The young rookie, I thought he was going to be out for 4 games. He's actually going to be healthy. So last week I mentioned that, but no, he might be out there. So get him because people might have dropped him or thought, oh, he's going to be injured. No, you want Marshawn Lloyd. Even if it's not week 1, he's going to get an opportunity as the season goes along. So he's a rookie running back. In San Francisco, the injury concerns with CMC, get Jordan Mason. He's the backup there now. It's not Elijah Mitchell. He's out for the year. So make sure you get Jordan Mason. And then we're in on Seattle this year. So I love DK. I love JSN. I love Kenneth Walker. Who's the quarterback? Geno Smith. We can't overlook him. We can't forget him. Aaron, our producer, is a Seahawks fan. We got to keep an eye on Geno, don't we? All right, we got the thumbs up. And then you got one on the waiver wire.
I put Greg Dortch on here. I think that Kyler Murray loves Greg Dortch, and I think that it's possible that he's better than Michael Wilson. And so particularly if you think rookie wide receiver 1, get off to a slow start, figuring out the NFL, which is often the case, I think Greg Dortch could be a serviceable kind of spot starter for you. And then I had one more, man. I just forgot it. Oh, okay. This dude in Denver that no one has heard of, Devon Vele. Have you heard some of the things they're saying about Devon Vele?
I don't think so.
Remember the name, Devon Vele. He's a 26-year-old rookie. Sean Payton loves his maturity and his work ethic.
Tight end?
Okay? No, he's a wide receiver. All right. He's a wide receiver in Denver.
Trip,
Sean
going
Payton
deep.
loves him.
This is a
Devon
deep cut.
Vele. Remember that name, okay? Because they let go of Tim Patrick. They let go of Tim Patrick. They got a couple of unknowns at wide receiver, and I think it's possible that Devon Vele kind of squeaks onto the field as their second receiver. And if Bo Nix is serviceable, which is a big if, then I think that he could be a spot starter for you as well.
I was hoping early in the offseason, I was all in on Marvin Mims, or I was getting excited.
Not hearing anything good about him.
No, it didn't work. It didn't translate throughout training camp. So, okay. I like that. We'll talk about
the
it
last
next.
name Vele has a nice kind of rolls off the tongue. So
Vele. Okay. Next week, we will begin a new season of our segment. No, seriously, who is that? So we'll do that
I should have saved it. That's
during Waiver Wire. So we'll remember that name for that segment. So, Trip, great show. Glad to have you back in studio today. Appreciate it. Nice wearing the Lamar Jackson jersey. And so kind of a cool league setup for you. The winner gets a jersey. Whoever wins the league buys a jersey. So that's kind of a fun little twist as we talked about league settings and league rules and all that today. So I might add that to one of the leagues. I think that's fun. For Aaron, for Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan and fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Be sure to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com. Enjoy the first week of NFL football. We are back.